let's say that is close to here and in time and in space. So this is about the northwest of Spain and about shrublands. This presentation is about their importance, the role of fire, the change along the history, the recent history. So everything starts with the importance of this type of ecosystem. They are valuable not only because of the landscape they provide us. They are also very valuable because of the biodiversity they host. They shelter many species. They provide food for livestock, for example, fruits for birds. The litterfowl is also the base of the fungal communities and stuff like that. They generate microenvironments below their canopy and around them, so we can find different species there. And above all, we can still use them. We can use them for ecological restoration, for example, because they have a very important role in protecting the soils and the regulation of hydrological cycles and stuff like that. Okay, this is somehow general, but this is now. We have other past uses that we had in the past. These are some captions from Ruth Matilda Anderson and stuff. So these are 1 century ago, more or less. We can see there a different landscape where the shrublands were everywhere. They have much more extension than they have now. And they were used for many other purposes that we don't even know now. They used them for smoking pipes, walking sticks. They were used for nests for different purposes, and this is really important in agricultural society. And above all, they were used or integrated in the agricultural cycles. They were essential for our croplands. And the reason is that the soils are quite acid and with a high proportion of saturation of aluminum. So these they were used to provide organic matter to the croplands and prevent, for example, toxicity. Their materials were also used for thatched roofs, and so you can see that there is a really high diversity of uses. But as I told you, probably the agricultural issue is the more important because they were the basis of the economy. Okay, it was so important that the captions, the photographs, and the art is reflecting the importance of the shrublands over the landscape. They were very intensively managed over the time. But now what we can see is that the past management is no longer maintained. So we have accumulations of fuel, of biomass. So we have a problem with fires. And the fire, you know, produces benefits and negative aspects. Some of them is the loss of the above ground biomass, but we have many others like the repellency of soil that increases a lot the erosion. And sometimes this is not very common here in the northwest at least. This is the case of smoldering fires where even the soil is burned because they are organic soils and they are organic matter, so it can burn. So we could ask whether the forest fires are so bad for them. If we take a review of the scientific literature, we can see that they were really used from 6,000 years ago. We have the use of fires for producing pastoral areas, and even despite of this use, the fire was still used, and it can be used today for their management. Of course, not an easy tool to use, and we have to take care of the management of the recovery after the fire. And in this regard, we have changes or we have differences in the regeneration of the different communities and the different patches according to the fire regimes and the productivity of the site. So if we have a very high intense and frequent fire regimes, we don't have the possibility, for example, to resprout. So if we focus on the regeneration responses, we have, for example, one aspect is the germination. We have some species that are really stimulated by fire. And if we, in the picture of the middle, if we are looking at the sprouting, the resprouting after fires, we have the same situation. Some species from the beginning are losing, but other ones can be stimulated by fire. So how the different groups, the different species integrate in their post-fire recovery is really interesting. So if we can take a picture of an ecosystem, we can be finding the different strategies, sometimes for the same species, sometimes for different species, they are changing, so it's really important. So how can we shed some light on these aspects? Well, we just have to do some field work. And so this is an old work, let's say, where we were trying to follow the recovery of the vegetation over time, and we had a good number of samples, and there we set different plots. We measure linear cover, and we found a very high diversity of communities and structures after fire. So it's really complex. But despite of this complexity, we have very interesting patterns. For example, in the Atlantic areas, we can find more gorses. In the intermediate areas, other gorses, but not the same ones. More close to the Mediterranean areas, this is not proper Mediterranean, but the transition, we have other type of communities. But despite of all these types of communities, we have similar pattern, which is a very fast recovery. We have a rainy, in general, rainy communities or rainy areas, so the regeneration is really high. But we have some areas where the recovery in the first months after fire of the first years is slower, and we have there the captions. Yes, we can see here these two. So when we are going from the uphill to downhill, in the most Mediterranean areas, the recovery mostly here is lower. So what's happening there? It was supposed to be lower here, for example. Okay, let's see. This is an Atlantic area, mostly the same community. This is a Mediterranean area. And this is downslope. So we can find much more heterogeneity, but this is not the key. The key is that the resprouting species are dominant in the Atlantic areas, where, and in the other side, the Mediterranean areas, we have a slightly less, well, I'm saying again, Mediterranean. This is not a proper Mediterranean. We have lower biomass and cover of these groups. So what's happening there? We are finding that this group, that is the obligate seeders, are having much more importance, mostly here in downslope. So they have a role here, they are important here. So those two groups are competing really intensively here. And in the other places, we have dominant resprouting species. And we have here the third group, which is the intermediate resprouters. They are not so important. And what we see is that this group is appearing when the other groups don't really succeed, or they don't get the best situation for them. So we have seen that we have different communities, but we have similar patterns, or they belong to different gradients where we are trying to study the environmental gradients, like the topographical one and the climate one. And so they are replacing one to each other, and they are interplaying. So thank you so much, and sorry for the time.